all for coming. I know your intended direction and reason for being here specifically, but I hope that this is helpful to you in your future leadership roles. And Michelle and I just want to give you some good information on how things go procedurally to handle local politics. I myself have some experience with that. I ran for a city commissioner back at during the last election and lost in the primaries. I'm okay. It was a really good experience though for me. I wish I'd have taken this course beforehand because I would have known a little bit more what I was getting into and how to go about running for something, filing, and all of the reporting and different things that you have to know to get into this kind of thing. But whatever your reason is here, I hope you have great success. And on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Committee, of which I'm chairperson, Tonda Phillips, by the way, we welcome you here and hope that you get a lot of good, valuable information.
Thank you, ma'am.
So,
Thank you, Tonda. Yes, we're so glad all of you decided to come tonight. I know this time of year is very busy, so.
turn on, flip it at the bottom. Sorry, I didn't turn on.
There we go. Now you can. Sort of loud, so you might not be. So yes, I know it's a busy time of year, so thank you for coming. But as of Monday, the election season officially begins with candidate filing opening at noon on December the 4th, and it will go through December the 15th, which is a Friday that ends at noon. So those are hard deadlines. We cannot file anyone before that, and we surely cannot file anyone at 12:01. So you've got to be in the city system by noon on Friday, December the 15th. So those are very important dates for you to remember. And I've given you a packet, and this packet you have is exactly what you will receive if you come in to file as a candidate in Surry County. And of course, we'll be going over this with you if and when you do file. And the QR code there on the front, feel free to take out your phone and scan that, and that'll take you right to our website. And Sydney does a fantastic job of keeping the website updated daily, sometimes more frequent than that, but the most current and the most correct information you're going to find, of course, on our website. So feel free to scan that QR code. And I am Michelle Huff. I'm the Director of Elections in Surry County, and I'll also recognize our staff. We have Andrew Smith, who is the elections specialist. Sorry, Andrew, blinked out there. And then Sydney Runline is our Deputy Director. And we're also pleased tonight to have Dwayne Carter, who is the Chairman of our Board of Elections. So I'm happy to have him here. Thank you for coming. All right, we'll get started. First off, you should see there in your folder, it is the offices that are up and are open beginning on December the 4th. And you'll see there all of them listed with their filing fees. And if you filed for an office before and the filing fee is a little different, they are no longer allowing us to round up or down with the filing fees. It's 1% of the starting salary of the position sought. So if you see that odd 32 cents or 51 cents, that is exactly 1% of the starting salary. So that is a little different for some of those offices. And you'll see Mount Airy City School Board of Education, if you'll notice, they have $0 there for their filing fee because 1% of 0 is 0. So they do not pay anything. And this is for everyone. These seats are the ones that are open to file starting on December the 4th. And we'll get on into the session in a little bit, that there are other offices that will file later in the year. And those offices do not require a primary. So that's why they do not file at this time. All right, and then flipping on over, you'll see in your packet, you should see on the other side of the packet, the schedule for 2024. And if you take a look, that should include everything for the year to date that the State Board of Elections has determined as far as when we will begin with absentee ballots, when we will begin with early voting and election day, all throughout the year. The only thing, we do not have a lot of information for the general election. You'll see some dates are a little, just a few dates there. And the state board has not determined or has not designated those yet, because there is a lot of election law changes that's come along in the past few months. So I think they're still awaiting how things will go before they commit to those. But as far as the primary and the filing dates through June and July, that is all set in stone as you see it there. One change we did make on your schedule that you have, you'll see that absentee voting begins. Your copy should be marked through. That literally changed yesterday. So we already had these copies made, and instead of throwing those away, we just marked through. And the state board did vote unanimously to push absentee voting, which was known as absentee by mail. They pushed it to 45 days from election day instead of 50 days. And that's because of the many holidays that we have between the time filing closes and the time that absentee voting begins. So we are happy that they agreed to do that. And if you did, I hope everyone signed in. That is if you want to be on what we call the sunshine list. And that list, I know Joe's on that list, Tom has been on that list. Every night of filing, I will send an email out with who was filed for what office, and we keep it updated throughout the whole filing period. And then you'll remain on that list throughout the election season next year for anything. So if you did not sign up when you came in and put your email down, please do so if you'd like to be on that list. And if you see there, our first absentee board meeting actually will begin January the 30th. So it will be moving right along for sure. And anytime you have a question about this process tonight, please raise your hand. I'll be glad to answer it. And then, of course, there'll be a question and answer period at the end. If you want to look back at the first sheet we were talking about that had the seats open to file, these 3 sheets here are a staple to that. And we will go over this if you do file, that'll be in your packet. It's just some good reminders about your committee, about a treasurer, about financial account numbers and things like that. And we're going to go through that more as we go on tonight. And then if you flip over to the highlighted portions there that's in the middle page on the screen, there, do not accept any cash over $50. You're going to hear that so you're blue in the face, right? For the 2 that's room for, we do try to harp on that, and that's for your benefit. No donations or no expenditures in cash over $50. You need a traceable or verifiable form of payment. So things like that are highlighted. No contributions from a business. All about loans, and we're going to get into that more as we go. And then the next page, that's just what we would call our receipt. And we will check off this sheet that we have went over every one of these campaign finance forms with you when you file and what they mean. And at that time, if you have any questions about those specifically, we'll be happy to go into those questions. And then we're going to write in there that the forms are due back to us 10 days from when you file. So you see that blank there, forms are due back to Surry County Board of Elections by, and we're going to write that in according to 10 days out from your file date. Then also on the bottom of that is your reporting schedule. So if you do file over the threshold, anyone here know what that means? What is that amount? $1,000, right. If you intend to raise and or spend over $1,000, that means you're going to file over threshold. And that then means you're going to have to file reports throughout the year, throughout your election year and beyond, if you don't close your committee. And this is the schedule through the end of December for your candidate committee reports. And I will be emailing everyone throughout the year as to, before those, a couple weeks before they are due. But that is that schedule, and we'll go over that more if you file as well. Okay? And then if you coming to file, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get some information from you to fill out the notice of candidacy. And that form has specific things on it that we must put in the system. Again, before that deadline of 12 noon, this must be into our computer before that time, so you can be duly filed. But it's basic information about your name, your address, that must match your voter registration. And anyone that wishes to file to be a candidate must be a registered voter. And we'll be looking that up and match that to the information you give us. You need your mailing address. You will be asked if you've ever been convicted of a felony. You'll have to answer that question, and however you answer that question is going to be a public record. That doesn't mean you can't file unless you're running for sheriff, and that is the only person who cannot file if they have a felony. But sheriff is not on the ballot for Surrey County this go round. And then we're going to also be asking if you want to use your name as it appears, or if you want to use or go by a nickname. We'll have an affidavit for that. And then we're going to notarize your acknowledgement of candidacy. And then you will be duly a candidate on the ballot for the primary. And then a statement of organization. These are the forms that you must get back to us within 10 days. Every person who, whether you file under threshold or over, you do need to get this back to us with the information filled in to be a candidate. And this one is a very easy form. This one is just basic information. And you're not going to put any financial account numbers or anything on this form. This is just telling us what your committee name is going to be. Whatever that is, that's up to you to decide. You can be as creative or as simple as you want to be. But that is where you will put this, and once you turn this into us, this is the committee name that you're going to use for everything you do in the way of an advertisement. Your paid for by needs to match this name. Any kind of print media that you purchase to advertise your candidacy, that needs to match this name. So you can't have committee to elect Michelle Huff for the concerned citizens of White Plains, and then it paid for by Michelle Huff for commissioner. It's not gonna work. It doesn't match. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking of your committee name. And so think of that, how long you want that to be when you're writing this out 4 million times and saying it 4 million times. And also in your candidate email. So just think of the length of that when you're being creative. All right, and the other forms that are required when you file for a candidate, there are 3 forms. The first one you see is a candidate designation of committee funds. And that's just going to be telling us your name, who your treasurer is, and you can be your own treasurer. And then the bottom of this form is going to be filled out if something was to happen to you while you are running for office and there are still funds in your campaign finance account. This is going to tell us and your family or your treasurer where those funds will need to be distributed if something was to happen to you. And this does need to be a 501c3, so Boy Scouts, church, any kind of organization like that. No family or not your estate or anything, it can't go to that. It must be a 501c3. And as you see, there are 3 lines here. You can do multiple organizations, and you can let us know what percentage to each organization you want that to be. The middle form is the certification of financial account information. Out of all of the forms you will ever turn in or fill out with us, this is the one that remains confidential. This has your financial account information on it, so we will never share that with anyone from the public, and that remains in a confidential location in our office as well. So you will be putting your account number there. And we do recommend you use an account number specific to the campaign, not your personal account number. You may think, well, I can keep that straight. Trust me, no matter how small your campaign is going to be, it still can get confusing. So if you can keep that separate, that is definitely recommended. And then the last form there is your certification threshold, and that is where you are going to select yes, I'm gonna go over 1,000, or no, I'm gonna stay under. And if you file with us and you say, I'm gonna stay under 1,000, that's fine. If 2 weeks down the road, you say, I'm like, already I've spent $998. You're way far out from the primary, or the general. That's no problem, we can amend. We'll fill out one form to amend that, and then you're set on go that you're file over threshold. And then at that point, you'll just pick up and start filing reports according to the reporting schedule. So again, remember that $1,000 is your threshold. A little bit of campaign finance information. This is just a mixture of some of the tidbits. You will be required to take a mandatory finance training course through the North Carolina State Board of Elections. We'll be giving you that schedule as well when you file. It is in your packet there somewhere, and that is the in-person training. The state board also offers those classes virtually, so you don't have to go where those in-person classes are. But Surry County is on the list this year. Our in-person training, the state board will be coming to us, and they're going to hold that on February 26th from 1 until 5. And it will be at the historic courthouse. But that schedule should be in there, and that should be highlighted where Surry County is going to be. So we luckily got selected as one of the locations this time, so we're very thankful that the state board's coming here. That'll be very helpful. So first of all, on the campaign finance, some good reminders. An individual or a political committee, their contribution limit is $6,400. That's per election cycle. So that cycle starts over for the general. If you made it through the primary, you're going on to the general, then that starts over. So if one person has given you $6,400 already, then they can do that, but it will just be for that next election cycle. So your election cycle 1 is primary, and 2 is general. All contributions over $50 must be in what? Form of verifiable payment, right? Money order, debit card, credit card, some written method of verification, no cash. Again, I've already mentioned this, but candidates cannot accept contributions from businesses, and that includes professional associations, insurance companies, labor unions, things like that is not acceptable either. All expenditures made for media expenses, they must be made in a verifiable form of payment. They cannot be made in cash, no matter what if it is less than 50, which I don't know what media expense you're going to have less than 50, but nonetheless, none of that can be made in a partial payment of cash or anything. That must be a verifiable form of payment. A treasurer can be anyone except the candidate's spouse. I do have a little asterisk there because it cannot be a board member. It cannot be a precinct chair of a precinct within Surry County. We have 23 election day precincts. So if the precinct chair is that person that you think you want to be your treasurer, that is not allowed. So, but typically it's anyone other than your spouse. And you can be your own treasurer. Like I mentioned, you must attend a mandatory treasurer training if you are the candidate's treasurer. But we do strongly encourage the candidates, even if you're not your own treasurer, we encourage you to take that mandatory training. It's going to help you and that treasurer because you may be making expenditures for accepting contributions. You're not always with that treasurer. So it's good for you to know those rules and regulations. That's why it's very strongly encouraged for you to do so. An EIN number, if you've already been to a bank to open up a financial account, they may ask you for that. That is something that the Board of Elections does not require. We have nothing to do with that. So that's a security protocol for your bank. So you'll need to work that out with your bank. That is nothing we require. Any contributions may be returned, and that's including contributions from yourself for repayment of a loan. So keep that in mind. And an in-kind contribution is what? Non-monetary. So that's something that would have a value, but is a non-monetary contribution that someone has given to you. If you have a fundraiser, a barbecue fundraiser, and someone donates cups and napkins, you have to put a value on those cups and napkins and account for that as an in-kind contribution from that individual with a value placed on it in your records as the candidate. Again, the under and over threshold we spoke about. The under $1,000 or less than $1,000, remember you don't have to file financial reports. Over 1,000, that's spending and or receiving. You must file reports, and those can be hand delivered or they can be mailed, but they must be mailed with that deadline postmarked on the envelope. And for the for electronic filing, anyone can use the electronic filing software with the state. It's not mandatory, but it is mandatory for anyone that spends over $10,000 in their election cycle. And for local elections, we had quite a few last time it went over 10,000. So it quickly adds up. But the good thing about the electronic software is they catch a lot of things. They will not let you make a mistake. It'll flag the items for you. So if you take that plunge, I think once you do the work on the front end, it's much easier as you go along if you do the electronic filing with the state. The only problem, the state has still not changed, and you cannot file electronically with an Apple MacBook. It just will not work. So that's the only downfall. I hope one day they'll get with it, but so far they haven't. Legends, I think this is probably what we get the most questions about is legends. I guess the best thing to think, again, you will see this when you get your, when you go online with the state or go through the treasurer's training, they'll go in depth on this much more. But billboards, cards, palm cards, newspapers, inserts, magazines, mass mailings, flyers, pamphlets, all that print media requires a legend. So you've got to have a paid for by. That portion's got to be on whatever print media you have. If you do have a flat surface greater than 50 feet, that is considered a billboard or a print media that must have that legend. Your standard yard signs, they do not require it. So you do not have to have it if it's standard. Greater than 50 feet, no matter if it's a vehicle wrap, then it would require that paid for by legend. Penalties, if you do not get your reports turned in timely by the due date or by the deadline, penalties can be $50 a day, not to exceed $500 for that campaign. Statewide offices can be $250 a day with a $10,000 maximum, but that wouldn't probably apply to anyone in here. But local offices still, $500 is a lot. So you want to make sure you do meet those deadlines if you file over threshold for your reports. And please, once you get through the primary, and maybe it didn't go well for you, maybe you didn't win, and maybe you're not sad about that in the end after you got to that point. If you would like to go to inactive status, you can do that, and then you will not have to file reports throughout the election year. If you're not at a zero balance, you cannot close your committee. So if you only have $200 or $100 left, and you want to just go inactive, that's fine. You can keep that balance in there, and that keeps you from having to do the reports until the next election cycle, the next election year. And at that time, if you want to make a decision, if you want to run again, you might have named your committee Smith for commissioner or Smith for office, let's say. Then that's very generic. You could use that for another office to run the next election. So that way you could keep it open with an inactive status and not have to open a whole new committee. All right, general candidacy requirements. Again, registered voter, I mentioned before. And then you also must be 21 years old on election day. If you're not registered to vote, you can register when you come in to file. That can happen too. And you can go ahead and file your notice of candidacy at that time you register. If you are filing for an office that is a partisan office, you must be registered with that political party that you are filing for, the office you're filing for. 90 days from the time that you filed your notice of candidacy. And we will have a chart that we will go by when you file to make certain. If you changed from, say, a Democrat to an affiliate or a Republican to a Democrat in late October, then you're not going to be able to run for that office because you were within that 90-day time. So you do have to be with that party for 90 days. I mentioned the felony convictions. Every candidate will be asked if they have committed a felony, and it will require disclosure of the felony. There's a form that will be filled out with what that felony was. And again, that's not a deal breaker. You just have to be upfront with that felony disclosure. If for any reason we find out that that felony was not disclosed, you do have 48 hours within filing the notice to notify us of that felony. But if not, if that has not been done, by the time filing is ended, then you will not be a candidate. And also a candidate may not file for more than one office in the same election. I don't think anybody would want to do that and keep up with that anyway. Here's the the chart for the 90 days filing with the party. So if you file on that first day, Monday, December the 4th, you must have been affiliated with the political party by Tuesday, September the 5th. And you see there, our chart does go all the way to December the 15th. We only have one group of offices that are nonpartisan in Surry County for this election, and that is the City of Mount Airy seats. That's the 3 commissioner seats for the City of Mount Airy. They are nonpartisan. So every school board seat and every other seat is associated with the party. And we'll get to an unaffiliated candidate here in just a second. You can be associated with Democratic Party, Green Party, Libertarian Party, and Republican Party, and run for a partisan office in 2024. But the No Labels Party have decided to not participate in the primary for 2024. So you might see a No Labels candidate for the general, but you will not see one in the primary because they've chosen not to run. And Sydney, have you looked lately what No Labels, how many we have? It's still around 15?
15, 20.
Yeah, between 15 and 20 people we now have registered as a No Labels party, since they did become a recognized party a few months back from North Carolina. Okay, candidate's name on the ballot, a very important part. The names will appear on the ballot as they appear on the notice of candidacy form. So when we ask you, and our staff is filing you, when we ask you, is this the name that you want to use? And we're going to make you initial it by that name. That is what we must use. There is no changing from that point. So if you have a nickname or your name's hyphenated, or you are a married female who wants to use your maiden name because maybe more people knew you that way, just keep all that in mind and have that set and ready to go when you're ready to file. So we can have that correct at that time because that's how it's going to be on the ballot. Nicknames are allowed and they can be used. And there are some nickname guides here. I think you might have that in your packet there. For example, the second one there, a candidate may abbreviate using the first letter. So if George Smith wants to just be G. Smith on the ballot, G. Smith, they can. That's considered a nickname. And they would just have to sign the nickname affidavit to have that. If William Andrew Smith, who wants to be W. Drew Smith, that's allowed, but again, would have to sign the nickname affidavit. The only titles that are allowed to be used are Mr., Mrs., Miss, or Mrs. Mrs. and Mrs. There are no other titles of the honorable, whatever, that can't be used. So those are the only ones allowed. And then a candidate may choose to include a suffix. If they're a junior, a senior, a first, second, third, that is allowed as well. And no affidavit, nickname affidavit is required there. If you have a hyphenated surname, as listed on your voter registration, you can use that, but that must match what is on your voter registration. And then your signature, each candidate must sign the notice of candidacy in front of either the chair of the Board of Elections, the secretary of the Board of Elections, or their director. And our board, of course, has allowed myself to be that person. And if I'm not the one following you, it's okay. We're all within earshot of everyone in our very cozy office. So if someone else, the staff is following you, it's still in my presence, so that is acceptable. And it must be certified by a notary public. So if you are having your notice of candidacy mailed to us or delivered to us by a commercial courier, you can get that notary public to notarize that. It does not have to be done in our office if it is done that way, but otherwise it would be one of us to notarize it. And make sure when you sign that notice of candidacy, you're going to use your legal name. If you're using a nickname on the ballot, that's not going to be how you sign your notice of candidacy. It must be your legal name. And then if you want to withdraw your notice of candidacy, that's fine. We just strongly encourage you to do that before 5 o'clock or by 5 o'clock on Tuesday, December the 12th. If you wish to withdraw after that, you can, but you're still going to appear on the ballot. So you would just be trying to get that word of mouth out that you are not running, but it is too late to remove your name from the ballot at that point. And the general statute says that is 3 days from the filing deadline, the time to withdraw that notice. And within that time frame, you can get your filing feedback as well. If it's after that deadline, you will not get your filing feedback and your name will appear on the ballot. And that happens so often. It really happens a lot, believe it or not. And there is just one simple little form there that we can get you to fill out in our presence, and we can remove you, and your name will not be on the ballot if it's within that deadline. I think I mentioned this before, but the filing fee is 1% of the annual salary, usually the starting salary of the office sought. The filing fees, I think it is, school board is $24, so you can pay that in cash. But if it's over $50, that still applies to no cash rule. If it's over $50, you must pay by a check or money order. We do not accept cards in our office. So for filing for Surry County, make sure to bring a check or money order for that fee. And if you are associated with a political party, in lieu of that payment, you can file a petition requesting to be a candidate in lieu of that fee. So that is an option as well. And then a really important item, and we've actually got a couple of calls on this already. The candidate must appear before us and file. No one can file for you. No one can deliver the papers to our office for you. The only other way that's allowed is through a commercial courier or the United States Postal Service, but they must be received in our office timely before that new deadline. Doesn't matter about the postage date on that. It must be to our office or you will not be filed. And then unaffiliated by petition, we've had in the recent years that has occurred. It's occurring more and more, but we do have that to happen. If you are even associated with a party, if you're registered with the party, you still can file unaffiliated by petition. That is completely up to you. And also, if you are an unaffiliated voter, then you would have to file unaffiliated by petition. The only people that would not for this election would be your City of Mount Airy folks for commissioner. But first, what happens if you want to be an unaffiliated by petition candidate, you would obtain and complete a petition request form from our office. And then at that time, we would provide you with signature sheets, and we would let you know the required number of signatures of registered voters within your district that you would have to obtain, and then the deadline for that. And in Surrey County, you would either need to obtain 1.5% of the registered voters or 4% of signatures of registered voters in your district. So, for example, Mount Airy City Schools, if you want to run for school board for Mount Airy City Schools, as of this week, there were 7,250 registered voters in all of the Mount Airy City School districts. And you would need 1.5% of those registered voters' signatures. So you would need 109 signatures to be on the ballot for the general election. And those signatures would be have to be in our office by noon on the Friday before the 7th Saturday before the election. Yeah. And then another example, if you're running for Surrey County School Board, that's a whole county office, right? Where Mount Airy City Schools is just that district. So you're going to have to get 4% of the countywide voter registration. So as of today, Sydney just updated it on our website today. We have 47,280 registered voters. So you're going to have to get 1,892 signatures. But they are due to our office by noon on the day of the primary. So it's different according to what office you're running for. So if you are an unaffiliated voter, and you want to run for office, just come see us, talk to us afterwards so we can sort of give you a figure and a deadline. We'll be happy to do that by phone if you want to call us, if that is that process. Just remember though, as an unaffiliated petition candidate, you will not appear on the ballot for the primary. You would go straight to the general if you are qualified as a candidate. All right. And then voting methods. We have absentee voting. Again, that has changed. The wording has changed a little bit with the new election law. It is no longer absentee by mail, although it is distributed by mail. It's called absentee voting. And that period begins again, January 19th is when the absentee ballots will be distributed, and they'll be ongoing throughout the election. But that is the first day they'll be distributed. And I do want to say, we get lots of questions many times. Why did my mom receive 6 ballots? Why did my daughter receive 7 ballots? Well, you can't receive a ballot in North Carolina unless you fill out an absentee ballot request form. And we cannot send you an absentee ballot request form unless you request it of us. Now, political parties, political activist groups, they can send you multiple, endless absentee ballot request forms. That is, according to the law, they can do that. That's not a ballot. That's a ballot request form. So I think people get the terminology confused, but you're not receiving the ballot unless you're voting for someone. So it sounds very simple, but people do get that very confused. So just know that you will not receive a request form from us unless you have let us know that you want one. And we will only send you one unless we receive it and there is something left off or there's something wrong with that information. Then we would send you another one. But political groups can send you those, and it's endless with how many they can send. If you receive 7 and you fill out 7, by law, we have to enter all 7 of those. That still only means you're going to receive 1 ballot. But by law, we have to enter all 7 into our system. And they're probably all going to be the very same. So just something to keep in mind. Also, early voting, that is in-person voting at an early voting site. It was referred to for years as one stop. That is no longer the language. It is now just early voting. And our board did vote a few weeks ago to have 2 locations for the primary. So in this room in here, that you're sitting in here, that is the Dobson early voting site. And then the Mount Airy early voting site is there behind the service center behind Arby's in Mount Airy. So that'll be the 2 sites for the primary. A general election will be decided closer to that time frame. Election day is always 6:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. And that is where you can go vote at your assigned voting precinct. And in Surrey County, we have 23 of those on election day, all throughout the county. And then provisional voting, That is voters, where voters' eligibility to vote cannot be determined immediately at that time in the precinct, but by law, you cannot and will not be turned away, and you'll be offered a provisional ballot. And then, between the close of polls and the night or the day before canvass, our staff and our board will do research and have a meeting where the board will determine if that ballot will count according to the circumstance from our research for each and every provisional ballot. Any questions about the processes, the voting methods? And campaign etiquette is just mainly our buffer zones and the etiquette that goes along with buffer zones. In North Carolina, the buffer zone is 50 feet from the front entrance of that voting place. And sometimes you can give a few feet there. It can never be less than 25 feet. But for us in Surry County, it is 50 feet at all locations. And that includes the early voting sites as well. And that 50-foot electioneering mark is going to be marked by a chalk or painted line at every precinct. And also it's going to have a blue cone that says Board of Elections and a red sign on top of it that says no electioneering beyond this point. So we do ask that you please respect that. And that also includes you cannot yell at someone going in to vote. If they're crossing that 50-foot, you're in their buffer zone. You are breaking the law. So keep that in mind. That's why speakers blasting vote for whomever is not allowed, because you're encroaching in their buffer zone. And remember that also applies to curbside voting as well. And then sign ordinance information. When you do file with us, you will have it in your packet. For each municipality, there are different sign ordinances within our county. And then the DOT also has regulations that you'll be given as well. I just want to highlight a few here tonight, but in your packet, it goes much more in depth by the DOT and by the municipality. But just keep in mind that political signs may be placed at any polling location up to 36 hours prior to the opening of the polls on election day. And then we ask that you remove those within 36 hours of the close of the polls. But we do ask that we use schools and churches for precincts. So, that's not public domain. They don't want to appear as if they're endorsing a candidate. So we ask that you remove those as quickly as possible the night of the election, if you can. And then they do allow us to put signs up, or they allow candidates to put signs up the evening before the polls open. Because again, you would not want a church to have that in their front yard on that Sunday, because that is within the 36 hours before the polls open. So just please keep that in mind. Our churches and schools are very good to let us use their facilities, and we don't want to abuse that or jeopardize that relationship. And during the period beginning on the 30th day before the beginning date of early voting, so whenever you see that general statute that you can put signs out 30 days before election day, that actually means early voting. So for us in Surry County, for the primary, or actually statewide, I should say, early voting begins February 15th. So you can put signs out 30 days before February 15th. And then it ends the 10th day after the primary or after election day, but those must be removed from right away. And then I'm not going to read there, but the 1 through 6, of course, most of those are common sense. You cannot obscure a road sign. You cannot block right away. You cannot block visibility at any intersection. And then there's height requirements there of 42 inches and 864 square inches. And curbside voting, as we mentioned before, it is allowed, and voters are allowed to cast their vote from the vehicle if they're unable to enter the voting enclosure without physical assistance. And anyone can do that if they agree and take an oath. read it up to you here. They take an oath that they swear or affirm that physical disability, and it is, I do swear, solemnly swear or affirm that I am a registered voter in this precinct, that because of age or physical disability, I am unable to enter the voting place to vote in person without physical assistance, that I desire to vote outside the voting place and enclosure. I understand that a false statement as to my condition will be in violation of North Carolina law. So every person who is voting curbside is taking that oath and signing that oath, that affidavit to do so. And if you have brought someone who has a physical disability and you say, oh, well, I'm just going to vote like that too since I'm here, well, you're going to have to take that oath. So a lot of times after we tell that person or that driver, they understand, they say, no, I can go in. So that is allowed. And again, keep that in mind as a campaigner. That curbside voter does have a 50-foot buffer around that car because that is their voting enclosure, just like walking into the voting place. And then election results, just a little bit about how we receive and how we read in at the specific times, the election results. They're never official, of course, until canvass. And this election for the primary canvass will be March 15th. Election day is March 5th. So the official results are the results that we put up on the website throughout election night and the following days after are unofficial until we canvass. And then absentee ballots that are received before election day are counted at either 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. on election day by our board. Our board has voted in the past, and I'm sure they will this time, to begin that at 2 p.m. But even though they are counted at 2 p.m. by our board, they cannot be read into electionware until the close of polls. So we cannot make that information public until the polls have closed. Absentee ballots that are received on election day, they are received by the deadline, and they will be counted prior to the canvass meeting. So they'll be counted that Thursday evening before canvass at 11 a.m. on Friday, March 15th. And again, that is under the discretion of our board, and our board is the only people who can remark a ballot or who can approve or disapprove one of those ballots. Provisional ballots are researched after election day, and if the provisional voter determines to be eligible, then his or her ballot will be counted prior to the county canvass meeting. Again, that occurs that Thursday night before canvass on Friday. Just some questions here, some generic ones. What happens if the notice of candidacy form is missing information from the candidate, such as the signature? A notarized addendum form may be sent to the candidate to resolve the issue, and that can be done via email or mail. But the addendum to the notice of candidacy form must be received in person back to our office before that deadline. What happens if the notice of candidacy form is not notarized? The candidate must submit a whole new candidacy form and must have that notarization to count. What happens when the candidate's notice of candidacy form has been filed, but they're not eligible for the contest in which they have filed? That really shouldn't happen if you file with us in person because we're going to be looking that up in real time. But if someone has got that, filled that out, got it notarized on their own, and they've sent it through FedEx, and we've received it timely, and they've already told or they've announced on Facebook that they have filed, that's the only instance I could see to where that could occur. Because otherwise, we're going to check while you're there with us to see if you're eligible for the district you're wanting to run for. But if that does occur, then the Board of Elections would notify that candidate that their candidacy has been canceled. If they have not met, if they've got it to us by the deadline. And if it has been canceled, then they have the right to request a hearing from our board to take that up with them to deal with their notice or their cancellation. Once a notice of candidacy form has been signed and notarized, can it be amended? No, it cannot. So make sure, that's why we ask you, we ask again, does everything look good? Does your name look correct as it's going to appear on the ballot? We're going to ask you the same things a lot during those few moments you're with us, but that's to make sure that everything is good as you go out the door. Can a notice of candidacy form be notarized by someone from another state? Yes, that is allowed. When I was talking about treasurers before, a treasurer must be a resident of North Carolina. I did not mention that, but you know, we live very close to Virginia, and we have a lot of friends and family maybe in Virginia, but they cannot be your treasurer. They must be a resident of North Carolina if you're running for office in the state. Can a notice of candidacy form be accepted prior to the start of filing? No. Can it be received after the filing deadline? Absolutely not. Even if it's just 1 minute after filing, it can't be accepted. What happens if it becomes apparent that a candidate did not complete the section of the form truthfully, either because they have felony convictions despite stating they did not, or not all convictions were disclosed despite stating that they had felony convictions? The candidate is not notified. Instead, we notify investigations team of State Board of Elections directly. So we would not be communicating with you. Your communication would come from the investigator at that point. Is the felony disclosure form considered a public record? Yes. What was the only form that I mentioned was not a public record? Financial account. Correct. Should a Board of Elections accept a withdrawal form delivered by someone other than a candidate? No, it must be submitted by the candidate. The candidate must deliver the withdrawal form in person or, again, by courier, appropriate to the appropriate Board of Elections by the deadline. And what was that deadline for us here or for the state? December the 12th. The 12th, right. And that is by 5 p.m. on December the 12th. And if the withdrawal form is received without a signature, is it valid? No, it is not. It's not valid unless that candidate has signed it. The candidate could be contacted and asked to resubmit if it's within that withdrawal deadline. Then if a candidate filing fee check cannot be processed because the account holder has insufficient funds, what is the time frame for the candidate to pay the filing fee before canceling that notice of candidacy? They are allowed 48 hours to provide that filing fee, but if the deficiency cannot be corrected within that time period, then that candidate's candidacy will be denied. Keep that in mind as well. And then lastly, before I take questions, just we're on all the socials, thanks to Sydney. She keeps it all updated, keeps it all current. So if you want to follow us on any of those outlets, she is posting things constantly. And when we get into logic and accuracy testing, when we get into audits, anything that our board does, it's all transparent. She's recording this tonight. We do everything we have a record and we have it for the public, open to the public, so please attend, follow us on one of those outlets. You can watch any process that we do typically that is open to the public through there. So you can find us there. And now YouTube is on there. All of our meetings are posted to YouTube, so look for us there. And you can watch live, you can watch later. So it's much easier than the way it was before. And you can go back and see what you missed or watch in real time. So be sure to look for that as well. Does anybody have any questions?
So the city, looking on this page, looks like their dates are the 6th through the 17th, is that right?
If you're Dobson, Pilot Mountain, or Elkin, is that what you're, one of those?
No, Mountain. There's a different date on the back. it says the sixth through the seventeenth versus the front says the 14th.
That's probably the municipal, that is not necessary, probably right here.
Commissioners.
Calling for Dobson, Elkin, and Pollitt municipal offices, roads, noon, 7-5. That was, oh, I see, yeah, no, that is wrong, yes, that's December 6th, it should be the 4th. Yes, that is incorrect, I'm sorry. So those last three on that page, should be the 4th through the 15th, just like everything else. Thank you for pointing that out. And again, 12 noon, just like everything else. And then Dobson, Elkin, and Pilot are in July. Yes, Joe?
I know there's been some changes with the State Board of Elections about people that are not board workers monitoring polling places. What exactly can be allowed? What is that all about?
I can send you that specific new law, the new statute, but observers are gonna have a lot more leeway as it stands right this moment. The state board has opened up a public forum, period recently. If you go to the State Board of Elections website, take a look at that. They just announced that on Tuesday. I think it's open for about a month. So maybe through third week of December, that they want that feedback from the public. So please take a look at that. Again, if you're interested in what those new observer rules are, I'll be happy to send it to anyone. And I encourage you to contact the state board. They need to hear that, because as it stands right now, the observers for any party or an unaffiliated candidates can also have observers in the precinct. We can have up to 12 observers at one time per precinct inside the voting enclosure. And also an observer, the way the law stands right now, they can move freely about the polling place. So before, they were placed to where they could hear the voter check in, state their name and their party. Now they can actually go to the voting booth and stand pretty close to the voter. There is nothing written in the law that states a footage or how close or how far they can get. What they cannot do is take a photo or a video of your ballot, but otherwise they can take a photo or video at any time.
Can they ask you any questions or?
They cannot. They cannot. If they do that, please get the attention of any staff person, any poll worker, it doesn't have to be the chief judge, and let them know immediately. Yes, sir.
Can voters say something about it?
Absolutely. As a voter, you can say and do anything you would like, and we encourage you to, if you feel like someone is encroaching on your space, do not vote your ballot until you make sure they understand, I am not comfortable with you that close to me. I understand in North Carolina, I have a right to a private ballot. I don't feel like I can have a private ballot with you right here. Absolutely. We cannot do that. Our staff cannot do that. But you as a voter can do that. But Joe, I'll be happy to send you that full, the law, the way it's written out. And, definitely let the state board know they need to hear it. And it's not the state board is just who is having to, just like us, make sure that law and that general statute is followed, but they can get the information to the parties and to the legislature to let them know that this is probably not a good idea. And observers are fine, observers are great, but it's almost at this point, it's crossing a line of privacy with your ballot. And then everybody has a cell phone, so anyone can take a video or a photo. I just think that's unfortunate in the voting enclosure. I think, what your politics are, I think everybody agrees with that. I'll be happy to send that to anyone who would like it. Any other questions? Comments?
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, yeah, thank you all so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wonderful.
And call us at any time with any questions you might have between now and the end of the and we'll be happy to help you. Again,